So throughout the years of me spraying lanolin undercoat on the bottom of this truck, one thing that always gets brought up every single year when I do an update on this truck is the condition of the exhaust. Can I do anything with the condition of the exhaust to make it at least look a little bit better? So that's kind of what we're going to take a look at in this video, as far as some exhaust coatings that potentially may make it look a little bit better, but I'm not sure how well it's actually going to keep it from rusting. And the reason that I say that is, yes, I can make the outside of it look much better, but it's not going to do a darn thing to the inside of the pipe. So without taking the whole exhaust system apart, treating the inside and the outside of the exhaust, is there going to be much of a benefit? It's hard to say, but visually, we're going to try and make this thing look a whole heck of a lot better. So let me take you over to the bench and show you what we're going to be using in this video, how I'm going to get it prepped, how I'm going to get it coated, and then ultimately at the end of the winter, we're going to see how it held up. So these are the products we're going to be applying in this video. This is Cerakote's C-Series high heat exhaust coating. This exhaust coating is rated to 1800 degrees. So you could use it on headers, turbos, pretty much anything in the exhaust system. Really, there's nothing on the car or nothing automotive wise that is going to reach 1800 degrees and stay there on a consistent basis. So pretty much anything automotive related, you can coat with this product. The nice thing about it is you can also heat these parts up to, like I said, 1800 degrees and then douse them with water, like if you drove through a puddle, and it's not going to chip, crack, or flake if the coating's applied correctly. They offer this coating in multiple different colors. This is the color that I selected. It's called Glacial Titanium, and this is what we're going to apply to the catback of my car. About 3 or 4 months ago, I applied this coating to the DPF, or diesel particulate filter, on my truck, and this coating is an aluminum colored coating. So like I said, you can get this in multiple different colors, and the nice thing is, if they don't offer a color, you can sort of mix and match. As long as you're buying C-Series and C-Series, you can mix the two together and they're fully compatible with one another to make a custom color if you wish. When you buy the half-quart container like this, they also include a training manual. This is basically what we're going to go over in the video, as well as multiple strainers. Really the only other thing that you're gonna have to supply to be able to apply this coating is gonna be a small paint gun like this. I bought this gun on Amazon for like 15 bucks. Honestly, they're not even worth cleaning because they're so cheap. You'll spend more on lacquer thinner cleaning them out than really what the gun's worth. So typically after 3 or 4 jobs, I just throw them in the trash and get another one. But so this is what we're gonna install in this video. Now I got to get the car up in the air and pull the exhaust off so we can start coating it. This is the exhaust that we're going to be coating in this video. This is the catback on my Mustang. So if you look, it's divided into multiple pieces, and these pieces are small enough that I can fit everything into my sandblast cabinet. So I can sandblast everything individually and be able to get a nice surface finish to get the Cerakote to stick to. I'm not going to be coating the mid pipe, frankly, because first of all, it's a stock mid pipe. Second of all, it's so large that it's not going to fit in my sandblast cabinet. So rather than do a half-ass job on it, I'm just not going to do it at all. So I'm going to coat everything from this flange to the back. In other words, the catback on this car. To get the best results possible, you really want to take the exhaust or whatever you're coating off of the vehicle or off of the project. The thing is, Cerakote says that you have to media blast whatever you're going to coat with Cerakote. So in my situation, I'm not going to run a media blaster or a sandblaster underneath this car that I just painted last year. So that's why I'm taking the exhaust off. It just makes more sense. I'm going to get a better quality paint job on this exhaust, and it's going to save me a ton of work masking to just remove this stuff rather than trying to mask it all off. So after I got all the parts removed from the car, the next thing that you're supposed to do, according to the Cerakote instructions, is actually degrease all the parts. And to degrease all the parts, what they say to do is actually soak the parts for 20 to 30 minutes in brake cleaner, acetone, or simple green. The issue is the parts that I'm dealing with here are so large that I would need at least 3 or 4 gallons of simple green to adequately soak these parts for 20 to 30 minutes at a time
to remove all the surface contaminants before you're supposed to sandblast them. The parts that I'm dealing with here really aren't greasy, so I just put them directly in the sandblaster, first of all because it's such a pain for me to soak everything, and the parts weren't that greasy to begin with. Now, as far as the details on sandblasting, so in this blasting cabinet, I have aluminum oxide blasting media. I want to say it's between 80 and 100 grit, and I'm blasting it at 80 psi. The instructions that Cerakote give, they're very, very explicit about the pressure, the type of media that you need to use, and really the type of surface finish that you're going for. With these parts here, some of them were shiny when I put them in the blasting cabinet. You need to knock 100% of that shine off the parts, and at that point you have a good surface for Cerakote. So that's what I'm doing here, is I'm going through and just blasting everything, getting everything to the proper surface finish, so we can go ahead and spray everything with Cerakote.
All right, so I've got all the parts here sandblasted, and this is what they look like. I've got them all hanging up from this garage door, and this is really how I'm gonna spray everything. Really, the next step of this procedure, you should be taking all these parts, putting them in an oven, and trying to off-gas or remove any residual oils by baking that stuff off. Unfortunately, I don't have an oven big enough to fit all these parts in, and the other thing is, my wife, even if I did have an oven that size, chances are my wife's using it, and this is going to be a no-go.
So since using an oven to off-gas the parts isn't really feasible in my scenario, I deviated from the instructions here a little bit. So what I ended up doing was I hosed all these parts down with the brake cleaner to remove, first of all, any sandblasting dust, any residual grease, oil, dirt, anything like that. Tried to get as much of that off of there with brake cleaner. I let the brake cleaner then fully dry, and then I'm going to off-gas everything after hitting it with brake cleaner using a propane torch.
So now that I've got everything hung up, I'm just going through with a propane torch, and you guys will see. I'll pull you in here close so you can see. I'm off-gassing and removing any residual grease, oil, dirt, anything like that that's on the surface. This does a really good job if you don't have an oven to try and remove any contaminants from the surface. It's not going to get it perfect, but you got to use what you got, and this is what I have at my disposal, so this is what I'm doing. So yeah, like I said, I'm just using a propane torch for this. It's just going to take some time to get this done. All right, so this specific version of Cerakote that I'm using, this C-Series, does not come with any sort of catalyst that you need to mix in with the coating. So therefore, you pretty much mix this stuff up, dump it into the spray gun, and you're ready to spray. There's no other mixing involved. You need to watch, because there's a bunch of different versions of Cerakote, and depending on what version you buy, it may or may not come with a catalyst that you need to mix in with the paint to activate it. So with that said, they say to basically shake up the can for about 5 minutes. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. So this is the gun that I'm going to be using. This is just a cheap gravity feed spray gun that I bought off of Amazon. It has, I believe it's a 0.8 millimeter tip. Cerakote recommends a 1 millimeter tip. I've used this gun in the past on some other projects using Cerakote, and it worked fine for this other coating that I laid down, like I said earlier in the video, probably about 3 months prior. So with that said, this is what I'm using for this project. I haven't had any issues with it, but it's not, the ideal spray gun for this. So with that said, I'm gonna go ahead and get this mixed up, get it loaded into the gun, and then at that time we're gonna go back down below and I'm gonna show you some of the details on spraying the product. Okay, so we're ready to start spraying. We're gonna do one wet coat. You do not want to over apply this product, because if you put too much on, it will chip and flake and peel. So I'll show you guys what that looks like and when it's good versus when it's bad. As far as the gun, I'm using 25 pounds static air pressure. I don't have a regulator on the gun, so I really don't know what it is, when I'm pulling the trigger. So those are the settings that I'm using here, guys. I'm going to go ahead and start getting this stuff coated, and I'll kind of bring you guys through and show you some things you need to watch out for as you're spraying the coating.
All right, now as far as spraying the product, One of the biggest recommendations that Cerakote makes with this product is to work from the tightest area with the hardest or the worst access to the easiest place to spray. So spray all the tight areas first and then work your way to the more flat sections that are easier to coat. Being that I'm doing just some tubing in this open space, I really don't have that big of a problem. The biggest issue that I had laying this coating down is when the coating's wet, it's pretty hard to tell the difference between the coating and the sandblasted stainless steel. They're kind of a similar color, so you need really good lighting to discern where you have it coated versus where you don't. As far as the amount that you need to apply, what I have found, just with the experience I had in my truck, is if you over apply this product, it will chip, flake, and peel. So the way I'm getting around this is literally what I'm doing is I'm spraying the piping with a light coat. And then once that piping starts to gloss up from the coating, at that point you stop spraying it. You spray it until it gets glossy. Once it gets glossy, just stop, because building up more and more and more really doesn't yield any benefits whatsoever. So keep that in mind as you're doing this. Keep the less is more mentality. So once you have a good surface finish with a high gloss, stop spraying it, and then it will dry how it's supposed to dry.
All right, so this is what everything looks like after about 10 minutes. What I did after I got done spraying, I just ran up and started cleaning out my gun real quick and came back down, and this is what it looks like. So if you take a look here, guys, it is it definitely looks more silver on camera than what it is in reality. If you put it under a lot of light, it looks silver. If it's if the area is not very well lit, it has sort of like a green cast to it. It's kind of weird. I like the color overall. You know, like I said at the beginning of the video, there's a bunch of different colors for this stuff, and it seemed like everybody out online was doing the bronze. So I wanted to do something a little bit different.
So this C-Series exhaust coating that I'm using in this particular video, that is an air cure coating. It requires no baking for the coating to cure. Some of these Cerakote products require a baking process to make the coating dry. This is not one of those products. So keep that in the back of your mind. Depending on what type of Cerakote you're looking to apply to your vehicle, you may or may not need to bake the parts. Now, with that said, this air cure coating, you can handle it after 24 hours. It's dry to the touch, and I believe like 2 or 3 hours, but they ask you not to handle it until after 24 hours. So that's what I did. I let it sit pretty much overnight, came back to it the following day. I took everything and just set it in the garage to let it continue curing. And then the following evening, I coated all of the exhaust clamps and the hardware and stuff. The nice thing is this coating is actually so thin that you can spray it on the threads of a bolt and you will have no issue threading a nut or threading that bolt into something. When this coating goes on, it is extremely thin. And because of that, you can coat very intricate parts without worrying, of globbing it up with paint. So with that said, these parts are fully cured after 5 days. I started bolting everything back together after about 48 hours. So keep that in the back of your mind as you're doing this process. You really don't want to handle anything until after 24 hours.
So guys, I spent a couple hours putting the exhaust back on the bottom of the car. I'll take you around and show you what it looks like. Honestly, it came out fantastic. I'm super happy with the way it looked. Obviously, like I said, there's a bunch of different colors that you can pick depending on what color you want. So this was glacial titanium. I like it. May not be for everybody, but there's plenty of options out there. As far as going back together, I did put like 1 or 2 scratches in the coating, and the coating itself isn't dry until it's been applied for 5 days. It needs 5 days before it's considered fully cured. I waited 48 hours before I reinstalled the exhaust. It's dry to the touch, and I believe like 12 hours, somewhere in that neighborhood, you can pretty much touch it and handle it as you would normally, but it's not considered fully cured at that point. It's not fully cured until 5 days. So the other thing that I wanted to show you guys real quick is I've actually had this product installed on the exhaust of my truck for about 3 months now. It's seen, salt, road grime, high heat from DPF regenerations on my diesel truck. So what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna put my truck up in the air and we're gonna kind of take a look at me installing that product on that exhaust and how it's actually held up. The thing is, with my truck versus this car, the truck had pre-existing rust on it, and you guys will see once we get into it, some of that rust did start to bleed back through the coating. So it's imperative that if you're gonna install this stuff, you have to sandblast it, specifically using aluminum oxide, and you have to make sure that you're removing 100% of the rust. All right, so on my truck, I coated from about the back of the DPF to this exhaust flange with Cerakote. So this whole section of the exhaust was coated with that silver Cerakote product. Now, as far as the coating, believe it or not, this is the third coating I've tried on this portion of this exhaust to actually find something that held up. And the other products that I tried, the rust bled through very, very quickly. Within 300 to 500 miles or one regeneration cycle of this DPF, the rust was bleeding through and it looked like crap. For those of you that aren't aware, so what this is a DPF or diesel particulate filter. And what this thing essentially does in a nutshell is it captures all of the soot or the black soot that you normally associate with a diesel engine. It captures all that in a filter. Once that filter is full, the truck sends a bunch of diesel fuel into the exhaust to burn off the soot that's in that filter. So this area of the exhaust, every 300 to 500 miles, will go to 1200 degrees and sit there for 20 to 30 minutes, depending on how I'm driving. So this area of the exhaust really saw just as much heat as an exhaust manifold or a turbo. Running down the road, this area of the exhaust really sits around about 500 to 700 degrees, obviously depending on if I'm going up a hill versus going down a hill versus city driving versus highway driving. So it varies, but I'm telling you guys, there was a ton of heat in this area because of the regeneration process. Now, going back to those other coatings that I was talking about, when I was using these other coatings, everything was fine until I went through that regeneration process and I had extended amounts of high heat in this area. Even the results that I've gotten with this Cerakote product, quite frankly, haven't been all that great. It's okay. And I'll be honest with you guys, this coating on this exhaust is probably gonna last me about 2 years before it comes off, being daily driven in the salt belt. The thing is, there's so much labor in the prep work and it makes such a giant mess to run a sandblaster in my shop that I'm not gonna look at reapplying this coating. If it comes off, I really don't care. That was why I told you guys, if you're gonna use this product, I would only use it on a project car, a fair weather vehicle, because the results that I've seen here really aren't anything crazy. I'll take you guys around and show you. I have some blistering of the coating. I think that's sort of self-inflicted. I'll talk about that in a second. And I also have, like I said, a bunch of rust that's starting to bleed through. As far as the rust is concerned, what I found was the areas that had pits in it. I was shooting blasting media at these pits and the blasting media was larger than the pits. So I could sit here and blast this all day long, but unless the pit was nice and large, you're never gonna get the blasting media in it. And because I did not want to remove the exhaust from this truck, there wasn't really a whole lot that I could do about it. So the thing is, the rearmost flange in this exhaust is way up here. So to take this exhaust off this truck in one piece without cutting it, I would have to take it off here and take off the whole thing all the way back to the edge of the tailpipe, all the way at the back of the truck. The other issue is, because this is a DPF, it's got multiple temperature sensors in it. It's got multiple pressure sensors in it. It also has a fuel inlet here to dump that fuel back into the exhaust to do the regeneration. So there was a bunch of sensors that I was also gonna have to deal with as well. So rather than deal with all of that, I just coated it in place. Now, because I coated it in place, like I said, I had to sandblast it in place, which turned my shop into a giant mess. And the other thing that it caused was when I was spraying the product, I laid down too much product in some areas. And because of that, that product started to blister. So that is a lot of this blistering that you see back here is I over applied the product. And the reason I did that is, first of all, I didn't know how much I needed. Second of all, it was access. You know, when you're trying to spray up above this pipe, naturally you're gonna get too much on the lower portions of the pipe. There's really no way around that. So that is why I also told you guys when I was coating the exhaust on the Mustang to take the exhaust off the car if at all possible, because the results you're gonna get are gonna be way better. Overall, guys, I don't know that I'm gonna apply this to the truck again. It seems to be holding up fine to the Mustang. You know, that's a fair weather vehicle. I've probably driven about 500 miles since I put that coating on there, and it doesn't look any worse for the wear, but that coating has never even seen rain. So keep that in the back of your mind. For a project vehicle, the stuff works fantastic. For a daily driver, I don't think it's really worth the effort to even worry about it. So another big question I'm sure you guys have is how well does it actually insulate the exhaust? How much does it reduce radiant heat? And from what I've experienced, I don't think it affects it all that much. And the reason that I say that is I'm actually doing some other testing with some other products on this truck that require me to monitor every single sensor on this truck every single time I drive it. I'm data logging all this stuff for an upcoming video. I don't want to give it away, but I'm literally data logging every single sensor every time I drive this truck. I put this coating on here, like I said, about 4 months ago, and I've seen zero difference in the exhaust gas temperature inside the pipe with the coating versus without the coating. I've saw zero tangible difference. Now you have to remember, I'm also only recording and only analyzing the air inside the pipe. I'm not checking the radiant heat coming off the pipe. But my thought process is, if the pipe is radiating less heat, the temperature inside the pipe is going to be hotter, and it's not. So to me, guys, this coating is strictly visual. If you guys are worried about putting this exhaust coating on and you have issues with radiant heat from an exhaust manifold, turbo, headers, whatever, buy a turbo blanket, wrap your headers. That, I think, is going to cause a greater effect than what this coating is. The nice thing about the coating is it will provide some level of corrosion resistance. So if you are going to use a turbo blanket or wrap your headers, yes, you could put this coating on those things first, then wrap it, and then you would probably get the best benefit possible. The thing is, with some of those wrap products and the turbo blanket products, if they get wet, you're also just holding moisture against that pipe. And it could, if you just have cheap steel pipes, it could cause those pipes to rot out. Stainless steel isn't as big of an issue. But overall, as far as changes in radiant heat, guys, I haven't really noticed anything, but I'm only monitoring the temperature inside the pipe. So guys, I will have links down in the description to the Cerakote, to a mini sandblaster, as well as the spray gun I use to apply it. As always, guys, if you guys like the video, hit like. If you want to see more content, go down and hit subscribe. Thanks for watching, guys.